All right, today we're tackling something huge. We're diving into Dr. Gabor Maté's incredible book, Scattered Minds, and his take on ADD. It's a total game changer. He basically asks, what if ADD isn't some inherited disease you're stuck with for life? What if it's actually a reversible impairment, a kind of developmental delay?
Wow. Just let that description sink in for a second. That image of a deranged bird, it's so powerful, isn't it? It just perfectly nails that feeling of a restless, constantly moving internal world that so many people with ADD describe. It's like your mind is this massive, wide open space, but you can't find a single place to just land. It feels both boundless and completely homeless at the same time.
So you might think a poet wrote that line, right? But get this. The person who wrote it was Dr. Gabor Maté, a super successful family doctor. And he wasn't just describing a patient. No, this was his own mind he was talking about. This whole thing for him isn't just some academic exercise. It's deeply, deeply personal. So let's start right there. Section 1, a doctor's own diagnosis. We're going to dig into that very moment of revelation. How does a highly respected physician look in the mirror one day and diagnose the chaos raging inside his own head? And this is where we hit this massive paradox that so many people can relate to. On the outside, Dr. Maté was the picture of success, a high-achieving, well-respected doctor. But on the inside, he described his own mind as a ferocious and malevolent beast. He was always chasing distractions, totally terrified of what would happen if he had to spend even a few seconds alone with his own thoughts. So what does he do? Well, in a move that's kind of textbook ADD impatience, he doesn't wait for a formal process. He just jumps right in. He gets his hands on some Ritalin and starts taking it himself, thinking, maybe this little pill is the magic bullet. Maybe it'll just wake up the calm, focused part of his brain he felt was missing. Yeah, it didn't exactly work out like that. The magic pill wasn't so magic. The Ritalin didn't fix the chaos. It just added a layer of depression on top of everything. And sometimes failure is the best thing that can happen, because this dead end forced him to stop looking for a simple fix and ask a much, much bigger question. What is ADD, really? What's actually going on here? And that question brings us right to our next section, Beyond a Scattered Mind. We're going to peel back the layers here, go way past the typical symptoms, and get right to the emotional heart of this thing. Okay, so let's start with the textbook definition. Clinically, ADD is pretty straightforward. It boils down to three main things: poor attention, weak impulse control, and hyperactivity. Get 2 out of 3 and you've got a diagnosis. But when you just list it out like that, it sounds so clinical, so sterile, doesn't it? Now, let's contrast that neat little definition with this. This is a real quote from one of Dr. Maté's patients, a 51-year-old man named John, and it's written exactly as he wrote it down. It's just raw. You can feel the struggle, the confusion, the constant feeling of never good enough. This is the reality behind the clinical terms, and it's absolutely heartbreaking. And that really gets to the emotional core of it. The experience of ADD isn't just about a brain that wanders. It's steeped in this profound, heavy sense of shame. Dr. Maté points out something really powerful. The most common phrase he hears from his ADD patients is, "I'm sorry." Think about that. It's not just an apology for being late or forgetting something. It becomes an apology for just existing, for taking up space. It's a life just drenched in this deep, constant feeling of shame. So if ADD is so much more than a checklist of symptoms, then where the heck does it actually come from? Well, according to Maté, the answer isn't in our genes. It's in how our brains are literally built, right from the very beginning. Get ready for this number because it is staggering. 75%. That is how much of our brain's growth and development happens after we're born. Let that sink in. 3/4 of our brain is built out in the world. And that means our earliest environment, especially our relationships with our parents or caregivers, isn't just important, it's everything. It's the construction site for our brain. So how does this construction work? It's based on a really cool idea called the Hebbian principle. The short version is this: neurons that fire together wire together. Imagine your brain as a field of fresh snow. Every time you have an emotional experience with a caregiver, it's like a sled making a track. Do it again and again, and that track becomes a deep, permanent groove. These are the neural circuits that become our automatic, unconscious, emotional blueprints for the rest of our lives. And one of the most critical parts of the brain getting wired up is the prefrontal cortex. Think of it like a traffic cop standing at a busy intersection in your brain. Its job is to manage all the impulses, emotions, and thoughts. Mate's argument is that in people with ADD, that traffic cop, well, it's underdeveloped. It's not on the job. So what you get is a massive traffic jam. This is so key. Hyperactivity isn't about having too much energy. It's about not having a brain that can effectively hit the brakes.
Okay, but what causes these brain circuits to get wired up in this particular way? Why is the traffic cop off duty? To really understand that, we have to look at the incredible power of early life trauma. And there's no better way to see this than through Dr. Maté's own jaw-dropping personal story. Just look at this timeline. Gabor Maté was born to Jewish parents in Budapest, January 1944. 2 months later, the Nazis occupy Hungary. A few months after that, his grandparents are deported to Auschwitz and murdered. And before his first birthday, he is separated from his own mother, given to a stranger to save his life. I mean, his entire first year of existence was just completely saturated with terror, stress, and unimaginable loss. And here's where it gets really specific. In her diary, his mother wrote about a desperate phone call she made to their doctor. Her baby boy, Gabor, had been crying, just nonstop, for over a day. He wasn't physically sick, so what on earth was going on?
The pediatrician's reply is, well, it's chilling. But it's also the absolute core of Mate's entire argument. The doctor said, I should tell you, all my Jewish babies are crying. Those babies, they didn't know what a Nazi was. They couldn't understand war, but they were marinating in their parents' stress and terror. They absorbed it through every touch, every look, every tense silence. And that fear, that anxiety, it got hardwired directly into their brand new developing nervous systems.
Okay, that is a heavy, heavy idea. But here's the flip side, and it's incredibly hopeful. If ADD isn't some fixed genetic defect you're born with, but a developmental issue that comes from our environment, well, that raises a huge question, doesn't it? Can it be healed?
So, is that it? Are you just stuck for life with the brain circuits you built as a baby? Or is there actually a way to change them? This is where the story pivots from diagnosis to hope.
The answer, thankfully, is a resounding yes. You can change them. And the magic word here is neuroplasticity. It's just a fancy way of saying your brain isn't set in stone. It can literally change, rewire, and grow throughout your entire life. We've seen it in studies. An enriched environment can physically change the brain structure, growing new and healthier neural connections at any age. The same is true for us. So the big question is, how do we create that enriched environment for ourselves now as adults? Maté calls it self-parenting. It's about consciously and intentionally giving yourself all the things your developing brain might have missed out on. We're talking about creating actual physical space to declutter your mind, getting serious about sleep, eating well, getting out in nature, and maybe the hardest one of all, learning how to say no to protect your own energy and needs. And a massive piece of this healing puzzle is about where you get your self-worth from. So many people with ADD run on what's called contingent self-esteem. That's the voice that says, I am only worthy if I achieve things, if I'm productive, if people approve of me. The journey is about moving to true self-esteem. And that's the voice that says, I'm a worthy human being just because I exist, full stop. It's a huge shift from proving your worth through doing to knowing your worth through simply being. And I want to leave you with this final, really powerful idea from Dr. Maté. You know that feeling of being lost, of not really knowing who you are? He says that's not a sign that you're broken, not at all. It's actually a sign that some deep, intuitive part of you knows there's a more complete, more authentic version of yourself waiting to be uncovered. So the journey isn't about curing a disorder. It's about reconnecting with that true self. It's about finally coming home.